Hey, good morning, everybody. This is going to be a three-segment video on the look ahead to the Flyers, some stuff about the NBA, including our zone Sixers, and then is Tom Brady finally declining will be the talk of today's video. Excuse me. Okay, so number one, in the NBA, the Sixers, where people were saying you can use the excuse that it takes time to adjust to new people. I get that, but when you're up by 17, that ain't an excuse. When you're up by 17, you don't need to gel together. You just need to look each other in the eye and say, play defense. And the Sixers' defense did not improve in their first game with Jimmy Butler. They blew a game yet again, and that is just the history of the Sixers in the past recent years. They're good for half a basketball game and suck for half a basketball game. That's, excuse me, that's the part they need to figure out pronto, because you're not being one of the top three teams in the East being good for part of a basketball game. That just ain't happening. So, in order to flourish and do well, which I think the Sixers will finish top three in the East, they need to figure this out. And they will gel with Jimmy Butler, I believe, after a few games. But gelling with Jimmy Butler and fitting him into the offense has nothing to do with anything when you have a 17-point lead. When you have a 17-point lead, you just need to keep scoring a little bit and just play stand-up tight defense. And that is not at all what the Sixers have done for really probably 90% of their games this year. So it's just getting to a point where the Sixers and Eagles kind of have the same problem a lot of times. Except for the differences, the Sixers' offense has been very fluent this year, at least for good parts of a basketball game, whereas the Eagles' offense has been ass for a lot of times. And then they've been kind of banking on their downtrodden, destroyed defense with multitudes and plethora of injuries. But the comparison there is they both have times in the game where they look like some of the worst teams in the league when they're supposed to be some of the best teams in the league. That is the comparison you can make. Both of those teams, now that I brought up the Eagles, need to figure it out quick, especially the Eagles, because the Sixers, that's an 82-game season. They have a shit ton of time to figure stuff out. The Eagles, on the other hand, do not. This is an NFL season. They have 16 games. If they want to win this division, the likelihood is they're going to have to sweep it. And that likely ain't happening. I don't think they're beating the Redskins twice this year with how good the Redskins have looked watching their games and watching Red Zone a lot and keeping track of most NFL games with the NFL app to watch all games. The Eagles don't seem nearly as consistent of a team as the Skins this year. And looking ahead to this Sunday, now that we got on the Eagles topic, good luck against New Orleans. With that depleted secondary, even if Sidney Jones comes back, good luck even guarding Brandon Marshall. Because Brandon Marshall's tall, he can still go up and get the ball. And there's a lot of people that aren't even that much taller than myself playing in the Eagles secondary right now. That ain't going to work. And who it's really ain't going to work against is the bad man receiver, Michael Thomas. That dude is a beast. He can catch almost anything you throw in his path. So, that ain't going to work. So, basically, the Eagles need to figure out something to do. Jim Schwartz also needs to be more aggressive. He's been way too lenient this year, and that is a pain in the ass. I know you have a depleted secondary, but that doesn't mean you drop all your linebackers back in coverage more and you don't blitz as much. Because guess what? You still have a lot of the people on the front, and you still have a decent amount of your linebackers healthy most of the time. If not all the time, those guys haven't been as banged up this year. You need to provide more pressure, actually, in my opinion, when your secondary is depleted. Because if you give them more time to throw, you don't have anybody good out there. We have like Jalen Watkins of the world playing and etc. And Russell Douglas is playing trash this year. So the Eagles need to put more pressure on teams, especially the Saints, because you're going to get mollywopped by the Saints this weekend if you don't put pressure on them. Alvin Kamara is going to kick your ass. Michael Thomas is going to kick your ass. And their defense is going to kick your ass if you don't put any pressure on them early and get momentum, because they're defense either gives momentum to their offense, or if their offense gets going quick, their offense gives momentum to their defense. The Saints are a lot more of a well-rounded team this year than they are most years. Most years they have a better one side of the ball than the other side of the ball. They still have a little bit better of one side of the ball than the other side of the ball, but it's not as much there this year. They're just one of the best teams in the league, hands down. Them and the Rams are the best teams in the NFC. And then you could probably say the Chiefs might be the best team in football if you go by certain statistical numbers so far this season, and of course the record. Moving on to the NBA. Carmelo Anthony needs to figure out what he wants to do with his career. There is interest in apparently the Pelicans, and apparently the Trailblazers have interest in Carmelo. Those two teams, I think, could mesh him well. The only problem is I don't think Carmelo might not start still on either of those two teams, and that kind of seems to be what he wants to do. But he also has to wake up and smell the roses and realize he ain't a starter at this point of his career. It's the same thing we're going to get to when we talk about Tom Brady in a couple minutes. You get to a point of your athletic career in every sport where you have to use more of your smarts and the intellect and each strategy you learned throughout your entire career to then play well. It's like Vince Carter. Vince Carter is one of the smartest players at the game of basketball and what the game of basketball is about. That's why he can still do a lot of stuff at the age of 42. Vince Carter does not have remotely close to the athletic ability he had even 5 years ago, let alone 10 years ago. Your athletic ability dwindles as you get older. Same with Jaromir Jagr in the NHL. The reason he was so successful is he had a lot of smarts and a lot of grit. Both of those guys are identical in that aspect. They know how to play, and they're so smart that when their athletic ability starts dwindling, they can still figure stuff out just based off of being there and getting it done for however many years both those guys' careers combined are. And the other problem in the NBA right now is Kevin Durant and his issues with the Warriors and getting into a heated exchange with Draymond, and then Draymond gets suspended over Kevin Durant, which some people came out as being biased because Kevin Durant's the star and Draymond Green isn't, so you want to always please KD. That's a completely different story. But the big story here is Kevin Durant has to stop whining and complaining. He's on the Warriors. You can't have a better starting five than what the Golden State Warriors have this year. If you're complaining on the Golden State Warriors, KD, I hate to break it to you, you're going to be complaining on every team in the NBA. Because the Golden State Warriors have the top five starting, the top starting five lineup. It's not really debatable. You got Klay Thompson, you got Draymond Green. As much as I don't like how the guy deals with the media and how he is personally, he still balls and plays like a beast on that floor and gets in everyone's head, which is somebody you kind of like having, kind of like how the Sixers have Joel and now Jimmy Butler. Both of those guys really get into people's skulls and mess with them. The Sixers obviously need to gel, like I said earlier, but you didn't see Jimmy Butler heavily complaining after one game with the Sixers. Kevin Durant, just because the Warriors are struggling for a short period of time, doesn't mean you start complaining. They're the Golden State Warriors, for God's sakes. You have so much good talent on your team. If you don't figure it out, that's just a disgrace. So, you're going to figure it out, KD. You just need to be patient, which is something you really never had through the entirety of your NBA career. So, advice to Kevin Durant is shut up and learn what patience is. Moving on to football. We have Tom Brady. Tom Brady, I have the numbers right here. His stats are for sure declining. Let's see, right here. He still has a 65% completion percentage, so it's odd we're talking about somebody with epic decline when their completion percentage is still 65%, and he still has 2,748 yards, so that ain't too shabby. But what is very not common to Tom Brady is only a a only 10 differential between his interceptions and touchdowns at 17-7. Typically, there's a much bigger differential with a guy like Tom Brady. And the other thing is he has 4 fumbles this season, which I think they said it was about 10 years or so since he's had that many fumbles in a season. It was at least a while. So the other big aspect of Tom Brady that no one's been able to figure out this year is the Patriots are one of the worst teams against the blitz. Tom Brady's always been like Tony Romo in the aspect of hike, get rid of that John as quickly as possible. So that's the part that really needs to be figured out in the Patriots offense. Why Tom Brady all of a sudden isn't as good against the blitz. Now, part of it is the injuries on the Patriots offense. Rob Gronkowski ain't who he used to be. His injuries are really starting to add up, and hopefully after their bye week, for the sake of the Patriots, I ain't a fan, but for their own sake, he steps up again. He kind of goes back to his old self, at least for a couple weeks, because he got that rest period. That's what you hope. That is not definite at this point with Rob Gronkowski's career, whereas in the past, it was, oh, he's got rest, he's going to ball out next week. That's not necessarily definite at this point. Whereas the tight end on my fantasy team, George Kittle, with my struggling fantasy team, because of all the injuries, and no, we're not going to get into that, is one of the best tight ends in the league this year with one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. Jimmy Garoppolo, of course, would have been great, most likely, once he got gelling into the offense his first full season. But C.J. Beathard is an average quarterback at best, and George Kittle is still putting up good numbers. So, at that point, it goes on the fact that Rob Gronkowski's injuries are just affecting him. Because Tom Brady does still try to get the ball to Gronk. You can see he can't get up as high. He can't extend as much as he used to. There's a lot of stuff there that shows this dude is hurting. But do I think Tom Brady is something you really have to worry about? Not really. I mean, let's be honest here. It's like Stephen A. Smith said. I think it's kind of insulting talking about Tom Brady as a epic decline type of player. The biggest reason is Tom Brady's always a end of the season type of player where he starts really balling out. The difference to this year is he typically has a lot better of the start of the season statistics. But this dude is Tom Brady. He's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, and even though I don't always agree with the dude and always like Tom Brady, you still got to give credit where credit's due and give respect where respect's due. And that is to the man that's been owning it for years. This dude took over for Drew Bledsoe, took the whole world by storm, and never looked back from that point on. So I don't think there's anything to worry about for Tom Brady, at least yet. If it's 2 weeks from now and we're still talking about this, that's when you can sound the alarm bells in Boston and any other part of Massachusetts where you're a Patriots fan. But now I think you still got to wait a few minutes. So that is the 3-part segment video. I might do another video later today, which will be strictly on the Flyers and a look ahead to them. The last thing I wanted to mention in this video is Villanova's struggle last night was very evident. They don't have a lot of size. That's going to affect them a lot this year. They're going to have to figure out how to play without even less size than they had last year. So that's my take on them, my short take on them. This has been Sports Fanatic News. I'm Joe Boric. Peace out, everybody.